Maranda High School versus Alliance High School. Two powerhouses, two legacies, one stage, one battle. Only one will move closer to the crown. At the heart of the metropolitan region stood Alliance High School, one of Kenya's most prestigious institutions, celebrated for academic excellence, discipline, and a legacy of champions. They stepped onto the debate stage with one goal, a spot at the nationals. From the very first round, the fire was lit. The debates grew tougher, but Alliance stood tall, unshaken, unwavering, unstoppable. With passion, clarity, and brilliance, they earned their place in the grand finale. Their one goal became a reality. Alliance secured the ticket to the nationals. Next is Maranda High School, a proud giant from the Nyanza region, renowned for academic excellence, resilience, and a legacy of champions. At the regionals, they stepped forward with confidence, ready to prove their voice belongs among Kenya's very best. From the very first knockout, Maranda showed their strength. Their arguments were bold, their delivery sharp, and their teamwork unmatched. The competition grew tougher, but Maranda rose higher, steady, fearless, and relentless. Their triumph carried them to the grand stage, the nationals.
But to deal with the youth empowerment, then what you need most is financial literacy.
That the problem is not that they're not financially literate enough, is that they do not have the capital to invest.
Now, the stock market is the bedrock of modern wealth.
The amount of resources which are going to be used to integrate this thing into the system is actually very high compared to what our country has.
Unemployment is rampant in Kenya, 83% to 85%, working in informal sector and a good portion living below the poverty line.
There's been a very strategic push to push a lot of investors in the retail market when it comes to the capital markets. At the heart of this conversation today is understanding how do we get more investors into the stock market. Joining us today for this debate, we have Maranda High School versus Alliance High School. Their motion of dissection reads, the stock market should be introduced as a core subject in Kenya's high school curriculum. I'll read the motion of dissection again. The stock market should be introduced as a core subject in Kenya's high school curriculum. All the best to both teams in the quarterfinals. Team proposition, first speaker, you have 3 minutes.
My name is Denzel Staffon. In these concrete towers, there have been a lot of false concepts that clearly inhibit tadpoles from becoming frogs. I propose the stock market should be introduced as a core subject in Kenya's high school curriculum. Stock market, a platform where shares of publicly listed companies are traded. Core subject, a mandatory subject taught in all students across public schools. It could be mathematics, English, Kiswahili. High school curriculum, the set of subjects officially taught in Kenya society schools governed by Kenyan Institute Curriculum of Development. Now, we are talking about youth empowerment. When I mention youth empowerment, we go global. That is their financial stability compared to other countries. That is their financial independence. That is their financial inclusion. Youth empowerment. Now, early stock market builds a formal independent population because according to the Capital Markets Authority, say less than 0.6% of Kenyans invest in Nairobi Security Exchange. That is just Nairobi. And over 80% of Nairobi stock participants are aged 35 years and above. Many are youthfully absent from capital investments. So it means that if you're to deal with the youth empowerment, then what you need most is financial literacy. And with such statistics, and if Kenya is to compete favorably with other countries, then you need to instigate such in our curriculum. First, according to the World Bank database, countries that improve capital market participation among citizens tend to have more resilient middle-class economies. That is what we want. We want to improve our country's GDP. And according to the Central Bank of Kenya survey report 2021, that the youth actually, that is high school and college students, and also the primary students, those who have actually invested in insurance and savings, they actually contribute to 40% of our GDP. That is without the stock market. So it means if we introduce this, then we're going to have a shift. We're going to have a skyrocketing economy. Now, countries with strong finances, literacy tend to have high domestic savings. They tend to have low debt defaults and strong small business ecosystem. Now, let us take the case of Malaysia. Malaysia introduced capital market education in secondary schools just recently, that is according to the SMEs. That is according to the World Bank database. And Malaysia, they had a 15% growth in youth participation in stock markets. And with this, according to the BBC News, the youth in Malaysia, they were able to contribute to 10% of their GDP growth. That was in 2023 with such activities. Now, Kenyan can actually replicate this through the Ministry of Education. That we have Old Mutual, we have we have KDIC, we have NCBA. Through the Kenyan Institute of Curriculum Development, if they bring this to our schools, they bring the knowledge. When the knowledge comes in through the stock markets, then our youth, they can now actually, they have that confidence. Another statistic says that our teachers actually, when we actually introduce stock markets in our schools, then if our teachers understand this and also the learners, then they actually improve their performance in other subjects. How is this unrelated? The OECD PISA report showed that students exposed to financial education perform 12 to 15% better in markets and economies and other subjects. So why not go big? Thank you.
Clarence Kenyo Alliance High School here to strongly oppose the motion that states the stock market should be introduced as a core subject in Kenya's high school curricula. They talk about we prevent tadpoles from becoming frogs. But our side of the house believes that the problem is not that they're not financially literate enough, is that they do not have the capital to invest. But let me go to the terms of definition. The Kenya high school curriculum, as it stands, the 844 is overhauled and it is the competency-based education. And what is the principles of competency-based education? Personalized learning based on the learner's ability, right? And what would it mean to make it a core subject? To make it a core subject would make this become a subject that runs across all pathways. What are the pathways? 1, STEM. 2, social sciences. And 3, art and sports, right? And what is the stock market? It's a place where people buy and sell shares, right? And now let me explain what the stock market essentially does. So investors buy a share, which is a percentage of ownership into a company, right? And when these shares grow, they can sell and make more money from it. I understand that completely, but we need to understand, why do people not invest in the stock market? Is it 1, because they do not understand it, or 2, because they do not have the capital to invest in it? Let me give you statistics. According to the 2024 Fin Access survey, only 1% of Kenyans invest in capital in capital markets. Most Kenyans live on paycheck to paycheck, right? According to the same study, only 18.3% of Kenyans are financially healthy enough. So my argument is this: that even if we educate them to whatever level that they have to understand the financial market to every scope, every detail, even then they won't still access these financial markets. Why? Because they do not have the money to invest in it. So what are we proposing aside? Instead of promoting it as a core subject, instead it should be integrated into various subjects such as the social sciences, because one of the subjects in the social sciences is a business study. Another argument we have is that if we force somebody to take stock as a subject and they do not necessarily are interested in it, because you have to be interested to invest into it. If this person is forced to take it throughout his education, then this person, even then, once he has all the understanding, he still won't invest in it because it's not into his liking, right? Why would we have somebody in arts and sports why would you have somebody doing art and sports take the stock, even though he's more of a social person doing music? His incentive is not to join the stock market, because they say understanding the stock market is being financially literate. No, it's simply understanding the stock market in itself. And even then, the stock market is such a complex thing. Why would we force so many students who are not interested in it to be forced to learn this thing? Doesn't that disincentivize them and make them not want to invest into it? Food for thought. So my question to them is this: that even if we have whatever level of education, we understand it in its depth, to its core, to its roots. Even then, how will I invest if I do not have the money to invest into it? Clarence Kinyo, Alliance High School, the winning school. Thank you.
Let me tell you this. When you have a problem, a personal problem, you don't go around thinking that everyone is so. If you find mathematics complex, I do not. If you find stock market complex, I didn't make your brain too large or too small. Whichever size or grade it is, that is your own problem. If it's complex for you, it's not complex for everybody. And you speak about CBE. I want to tell you this. CBE is not about you simply choosing what you want to do. That if you want to become a DJ, you're now just going to school to DJ and study DJing all through. CBE is about tailoring the education system into fitting what the learner desires. So here we're about tailoring these stock exchange markets. We're about tailoring the education for the doctor. You want to study medicine, yes. Now we want to teach you growth. Eventually, when you're a doctor, when you have your own hospital, you can make it public, put the company public, and then you can invest in the stock exchange market. That's where we grow. And why is this important? Why are we saying that we should include this? Because there are programs like the Chora program. The Chora program by the NCBA, by the Old Mutual, by the KDIC. All these programs are aimed at tailoring financial education to youth. And when you're speaking about financial education, the stock exchange occupies about 60% of the money that's being moved around in the global market. That's according to the World Bank. Then let me give you a brief breakdown. On one side, we have the USA. The USA have the New York Securities Exchange. The New York Securities Exchange, according to the World Bank, generates up to 97 billion in revenue for the government. This is because USA invested in stock market education when no one thought it was important. When we all were thinking that, no, this is too complex, when their grandfathers in green were thinking that this is too complex for my grandkids, USA did that. Now they're earning $97 billion for they are adding $97 billion in revenue. Then you come to Kenya, where only 66 companies have been listed in the Nairobi Securities Exchange market. How do we solve this? And why should we solve this? We solve this by bringing in education. Then why should we solve this? Because the stock market is out there calling the shots, it's playing the game. They said, the New York Securities Exchange Market.com says that in July 2024, they were earning capital for companies up to $18.9 billion a day. And you still ask why the US is ahead. You still ask why these other countries are doing better than us. We want to draw lessons. And how do we draw these lessons? We teach ourselves. You take the attitude outside. I want you to look at this. Son, I am coming in to teach you something that could be of your benefit. It's not too complex. Don't think it's too complex. No. I'm going to simplify it for you. The Chora program, they have the NCBA loop. They use storytelling to teach financial models to students. There's something known as Wavumbuzi. They use a village to teach financial investments to students as young as those in grade 8, 6, 7. So you can tailor this for anyone. No one is limited. Open your brain up and look to the future. Thank you.
So one thing that panel I saw in this team that was completely a joke was the moment that they tried comparing the USA and Kenya. We are talking about a country which is a superpower with high capital. These people are well equipped to be involved in this system. Why are you comparing a superpower to us? Kenya, let me read to you the motion again. It states the stock market should underline the word should be introduced as a core subject in Kenya's high school curriculum. Let me go fast to my rebus. Speaker number 1 talks about youth empowerment. Exactly. That is what we want. We want youth empowerment. And we as youth believe that the moment that we want to be empowered is when we get the capacity to choose what we want. We don't want to be forced something. We want to attain this thing at our own moral obligation. And it will give us the strength and the capacity to fulfill it to a better what? To a better model. Number 2, he said that we want to improve our country's GDP. Bringing in statistics about Malaysia. Exactly. Malaysia introduced the stock market into their educational system, and that is why they grew. That doesn't mean that they forced it into the educational system. That doesn't mean that they made it a core. No, they introduced it so that the people who have interest in it can actually adopt it and have better knowledge of working with the stock markets in a better way. And then number 3, their second speaker came and say that when you have a personal problem, don't share your problem with other people. 1. And then he said that we want the main essence of CBC judges is that tailoring the education system to what the student requires. That is not my words. That is their words, which I would likely
I likely want to agree with it. Why? Because that's the main essence of CBC. We want to tailor this system in an aspect whereby each and every person is going to pick what they want and actually specialize in each and every aspect that they want. And that is why we want to liberate the stock exchange, not a core subject, but we want to introduce it maybe as something which is integrated in another subject. As my first speaker said, we have STEM subject, we have social sciences. What if we introduce this thing and then we actually place it in business studies and we increase the scope of it so that the people who want to gain the knowledge on stock exchange can actually gain it and benefit from it. And yes, because I cater for you, and yes, you, Judge Jomo, because Judge Jomo is my very good friend, we have decided to give an alternative whereby if you are interested in stock exchange, we are not going to leave you there. We are going to introduce a system in our education which is going to liberate those people who want to actually be engaged in what? Into this system. Let me read you a statistic why this thing can ought happen in Kenya according to law, according to the KICD, the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. Only about 30% of teachers in public schools have adequate training in delivering financial literacy concepts. What do I mean? The amount of resources which are going to be used to integrate this thing into the system is actually very high compared to what our country has. Let me read you another statistics. Unequal access to digital resources. All of us know so that we can engage in stock exchange, we need resources, we need technology. But get this from KNBS. In 2023 showed only 52% of Kenyan households have access to internet, and in rural areas, internet penetration drops up to 30% or lower. Thank you.
I guess this is why they gave us the weak team to debate with. Because clearly, you do not understand. And honestly, if debate was all about vehemence, then I believe you would have won. Sadly, it's about logic, where I feel you are a bit allergic. Now, let me correct you. It is actually CBE, not CBC. Competency-based education. You spoke about tailoring the CBE curriculum to fitting, what the students' desires. I am trying to look at it this way. Math was made compulsory, unlike in the past. There was a reform that was made, and math is compulsory. Now, you are speaking of adding, say, these. You are speaking of adding the stock market education into, say, subjects like business studies. But I'm trying to look at it this way. If you feel like stock market learning is too complex for the youth, then what youth are we preparing for the future? If the youth or the students now in high schools and in the education system are too overwhelmed to learn about money, then how do we expect them to become adults? How do we expect them to raise families and raise the economic and enhance the economic development that we have in the country? Now, I have come to speak about my first point will go to the stock market. Now, the stock market is the bedrock of modern wealth. Not teaching it will mean derailing systemic development. What do I mean? I mean you can teach math, business studies, economics, but without teaching the stock market, you're only building knowledge, not wealth. According to the Standard Media report, that is in June 2024, last year, when the youths went out to protest on the streets, Brian Zenga mentions very clearly that I went to school, but it seems I went to study poverty because there is nothing education is earning me. Imagine if such a person would have learned something about, stock market. I look at, I was going through some videos the other day, and students were converged at the Ed Center in, I think, August 2025. And mid-session, they were learning something about Forex and stock market exchange and, the trading and everything that pertains it. And I'm trying to imagine if that was a daily, experience students would have in school. What am I trying to say? According to the National Securities Exchange Investment Challenge 2023, we learned that high school students outperformed 40% of real investors in returns. Pilot studies also from Strathmore and Old Mutual, they indicate that this according to the FA News 2024 report. They indicate that integrating stock simulation improves both math and business performance. As I conclude, we also learned that teaching stock builds critical life skills such that the stock market does not only teach profits, it teaches patience, discipline, future planning, what other subjects don't. So, when you learn to invest, there is delayed gratification. Tracking performance, there is goal setting. Analyzing companies, there is critical thinking. Luke 19, chapter 4, verse 7 says, Zacchaeus came down when the Messiah came. Kindly come down. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me take you over to Northwestern. Here lives a boy called Victor Njoroge. Victor Njoroge is a student in Form 2. Victor Njoroge walks 5 kilometers to school and 5 kilometers back. Victor Njoroge takes care of his father's cattle, of his father's goats, sheep, and all. Victor Njoroge is also forced to learn about exchanging IPOs, analyzing the stock market, understanding index funds. These are things that are of no relevance. I stand here to oppose the motion. The stock market should be introduced as a core subject in Kenya's high school curriculum, not only for Victor Njoroge, but for everybody in this room, for all the 4.11 million students in high school. The first speaker came in and said that it creates financial literacy. No, it does not. Focusing on the stock market as a core subject, it denies us the opportunity to integrate things like budgeting, saving, understanding credit, avoiding debts. This is actually what we mean by financial literacy, not the relevance of derivatives, index funds, portfolio diversification. All these are very relevant to the Kenyan youth. These are not things that they need. The first and second speaker came and gave us an example of capital monetization in Malaysia. That is true. But finally, what I want you to understand is that this is elective, not compulsory. When we put it as a core subject, this means that it is mandatory. And by this, they are by far going away from the motion. Second speaker came here and said that your brain is not your brain capacity is not my problem. Panel. 17.5% of students in KCSE 2024 scored below a C+. But that's not my problem. C+ is the minimum grade to enter university. But that's not my problem. Unemployment is rampant in Kenya, 83% to 85% working in informal sector and a good portion living below the poverty line. But final, that's not my problem. Moving on to our points. Misalignment with national priorities. Forcing down the stock market as a core subject is like landing a helicopter in a muddy village. Yes, it is a symbol of modernity. Yes, it is advancement, but it is not relevant. Why? There is no fuel in this village. There is no, there's no necessary training to fly this helicopter. It only creates chaos and confusion. And that is what the side proposition is trying to propagate by integrating the stock market as a core subject in Kenyan high schools. There is potential social harm that is promoted, risky thinking too early. There's glamorization of, making money quick through the stock market. And at the end of the day, this is a very highly volatile concept because people, our youth, are going into it with not the necessary knowledge. They're going into it without the necessary knowledge as to how they're going to At the end of the day, there are better alternatives that exist. Integration, as said by my first speaker, into business in the competency-based education is more of a practical way as to how these youth are going to be able to learn about financial literacy, not only encompassing things like a stock market, but also the basic concepts such as, budgeting, saving, investments and all. And at the end of the day, I believe that side opposition has taken this debate. Thank you.
Griffin also back again. I'm not sure what he was trying to say towards the end of his speech. I'm sure he also does not know. But anyway, I'll teach them something. I do physics. But since you clearly said some things are too complex for you, you probably and most likely do not know that airplanes use paraffin, which is a major source of fuels in rural areas. If I land my helicopter there, I have fuel. Another thing, you say that stock exchange knowledge does not teach youth basic financial concepts like budgeting. Risk management is all about investment in stock, investment in trading, forex. So risk management is budgeting. In fact, the first thing you learn when going into the stock exchange market or into the forex market is about risk management. That is budgeting, analyzing, planning, spending, analyzing again. That is what you do. So he spoke about 17% of the youth who did KCSE missing out on the C+ and above, and they missed university. Can you imagine what they would do if they had the knowledge of securities exchange, of stock exchange. And finally, nearly 60% of the world equity is controlled by the stock market, I told you. Over 2,000 companies are registered in the stock market of the New York Securities Exchange, generating 97 billion. Imagine if we tied this to Kenya, where market participation is only 1% of the population. Thank you.
Clarence Kinyo Alliance High School here to give you the final remark of this debate. The fallacy that side proposition has, that they think that when you understand the stock market, all of a sudden you'll have the money to invest in it. And that is what we have been saying. The reason people are not investing it is not because they do not understand it, it's because they do not have the money to do it. And I gave you a very relevant statistic. According to the FSD survey done in 2024, only 18.3% of Kenyans are financially healthy enough to invest into the stock market. They think that because now I understand how the Nairobi Securities Exchange works, that all of a sudden I will have the money to put it in it. No, we believe that instead of making it a core subject, running across all pathways, forcing people to do it even though it's not relevant to them, we should make it tailored that it's only integrated into the relevant pathways. What are these relevant pathways? That is the social sciences, subjects such as business studies, because a person taking business is somebody who's interested in becoming an investor, an entrepreneur. That is somebody who needs to understand how the stock market works. Not me, who wants to become an engineer, not Judge Minor, who wants to become, let's say, a lawyer. He does not want to invest in the stock market. No, he wants to invest in other things. So we should not force him to take it. That is aside. As Adam Smith said, free labor is better than forced labor. Clarence Kinyo will say, free education is better than forced education. Clarence Kinyo, Alliance High School.
Hi everyone. Let me just begin by reading what we are debating on. It says the stock market should be introduced as a core subject in Kenya high school curriculum. Let me just first of all give you general remarks on actually what you've done. I've seen proper case studies which are well researched with statistics and good citations, which is to both team a plus. You've personalized those case studies, be it derived from whichever global or regional perspective. You personalize it to be a thing that is happening here and now, which is perfect for both of you. To the opposing team, those are good alternatives that you're giving when you had a rebuttal, because they also gave a lot of, the opposers also gave a lot of things that will happen if actually stock market are introduced as a subject. So there was the alternatives and what might happen are well addressed. I also want to acknowledge that I was looking forward to the vocabularies that you're going to use, being that stock market is not just a thing that will need general financial vocabularies. So you had the perfect vocabularies introducing NSCs and whatsoever. So that was a perfect grasp of whatever we're talking about. To you, it was okay. However, for the proposers, I wanted, because you're proposing that stock market should be introduced as a subject in our Kenya high school curriculum, I wanted you to give me an impact on the status quo, because it's not introduced. What are we lacking? What is happening? What are the dangers that we're experiencing? And then again, those who are opposing that it should not be introduced, the way we are right now, how safe are we? And what progress are we going forth if we maintain that path? See, if you measured on that, you come out to be the stronger party. Above all, I've seen what you've done and your argument, and there is one person who said, you can only speak well if your mouth or your tongue can tell what your heart has, and that power is in you, and may you progress with this skill until it manifests to whatever you want in the future.
A round of applause, please, from our judging panel for their comments on this particular debate. I know much has been said, so I'll go straight and read the results. The judges have awarded Maranda High School with 62.58%. A round of applause, please, for Maranda High School. And the judges have awarded Alliance High School with 64.24%. A round of applause, please, for Alliance High School, making them the winners of this round with 64.24%. A round of applause, please, for the winning team of this particular round. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of yet another episode here at the Debate Circle. I have been your host, Jaina Cheng, and until next time, it's goodbye from us. Remember to follow all our social media handles. That's at the Debate Circle across all platforms. Kwaheri.